Well, hey there, folks. Good evening. John Duffin here, Duffin Media, Duffin Coaching. Welcome back to another episode of JD Gets Authentic. So, what's all the commotion about? For me, we created a platform right here on nofilter.net in order to bridge and cross the points of business, communications, looping in some sports to help you find your best, most true, authentic business voice, right? Helping yourself in business, get what you want, find what you need, improve your results. We use this platform because it's a free, and I don't mean free cost. Well, it is actually for you tonight, but it's also a free communications opportunity. Say what you want, be heard, be understood, be acknowledged. Doesn't mean I have to agree. It doesn't mean you have to agree with me. But the fact of the matter is, as I learned the first time I guested on this platform, oh my gosh, I guess it was 2 years ago, how valuable it is to be able to just allow yourself to speak and not get cut off. So, welcome back to another episode. Every week, what we're doing is we're dropping a few tips in order to optimize your communications by leveraging your voice. And again, the sports part is seeing what's happening in the world of sports. And when we do, bringing it into the business world, bringing it into, if you're in business, if you're in sales, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a part of a corporation, allowing you to use those visual examples to make certain that either you emulate what's going on, we learn from what's going on, we might take a different path, but to me, the ability to communicate ultimately is what drives business. You need to be heard. More importantly, you need to hear other people. So that's always the whole setup. Every time we're on nofilter.net, that's exactly what we're doing. So if you're joining me live tonight, I am thrilled. There are no ground rules except for this. 2 opportunities that you get in regards to joining me live. You always have the ability to drop a note in the chat. If you're here with me live now, please drop a note in the chat so that I know that you're here and I get to acknowledge you. And I will read every chat that's going on. And so happy to contribute. I'm happy for your contributions. Come on, John. Happy for your contributions. Mind if I get my phone? We're going to talk about that in a moment too. But I want to hear your contributions. Chime in. Even better, if you're here with me live, even better and more fun for me, there is a knock button. Look at the bottom of the screen. So whether you're joining me by your mobile phone or you're joining me through the No Filter app, or if you're joining me on your old school desktop, look for the knock button. What happens when you knock and I get to see it? I get to bring you on live stream with me, and then we could get to communicate, hash out the talking points, the matters at hand. I want to hear you. And again, you don't have to agree with me. I don't have to agree with you, but I want to have the communication, right? So I talk about top tips and optimizing communications. Here's the foundation for tonight's episode. And it's interesting because I really wanted to have this conversation tonight. Why? Because I felt really uncomfortable with it. That to me is a signal I've got to have the conversation. Not because I'm so important, not because what I have to say matters at all, let alone so much. But when I get uncomfortable, it means I'm sitting on something. And that typically means to me that I've got to articulate. So over the last couple of days, I had a couple of topics. I'm going to literally limit it to one tonight. Now, when you drop a note in the chat, you can certainly stick with the topic. But if anything you want to articulate makes you feel any better, great, do so. Here has been the topic over the last couple of weeks specifically. If you're a fan of the Pat McAfee show, I am. Hey, Pat McAfee, if you're anywhere nearby, you want to jump on, please do. if you are familiar and or a fan of the Pat McAfee show, if you are familiar with and are a fan of Aaron Rodgers, and it would be hard to imagine that you're unfamiliar with a Super Bowl quarterback, future Hall of Famer, and current New York Jet and longtime Green Bay Packer. I'd be surprised if you weren't familiar with him. Oh, and Jeopardy host at one time, too. He's a frequent weekly contributor to the Pat McAfee show. And so a paid featured guest. So are you familiar with? Are you paying attention to Jimmy Kimmel? Again, I'm guessing you know who Jimmy Kimmel is. Late night host ABC for decades. It's really important in terms of what's happening. These are our three personalities. And then ESPN and we'll say cable, broadcast, digital, streaming, network television, so to speak. These are the principles. So if you've been following the news, following the live streams and what have you, there has been a lot of turbulence as it regards to Pat McAfee, the Conduit, his show on ESPN, who features Aaron Rodgers typically once a week, Tuesdays, as a matter of fact. And Jimmy Kimmel, who responded to, I'll share my opinion, but you don't have to agree, disagree, who shared to me a wildly inflammatory comment regarding Jimmy Kimmel, Jeffrey Epstein, and worrying about being on Jeffrey Epstein's list of people. So I'm not going to go into a long version of who Jeffrey Epstein is. I'm strongly guessing you're aware of that too. But the ugliness that ensues with the implications of if people are friends with Jeffrey Epstein or were, if they have traveled to Jeffrey Epstein's island, what that infers. Ugly, salacious, like I'm going to say slurs in regards to person. If they are there, I'll just say the word pedophilia. It's like right, and all of a sudden I cringe just saying a word, not because it's a bad word, but what it implies that there's certain insults that cross lines. Again, my opinion, cross lines. So it's been everywhere in the news, but I'll just throw a real fast summation. Roughly a week ago, right? Maybe 10 days ago. I've lost track of a couple of the days that Aaron Rodgers is on the Pat McAfee show, which he is. And I grew to like that. On Tuesdays, I would tune in because I wanted to hear what Aaron Rodgers had to say. He has come off as a well-spoken, speaks his mind, but in a way that's typically not subdued, but easy to listen to. Speaks from the heart, but he's not a screamer or hollerer, sorry. And he's on the McAfee show, and they're just jawing about whatever. The Jets, his recovery from an Achilles injury, the NFL in general, college football, whatever. And literally Aaron Rodgers throws out something to the effect of, oh, that list is coming out. Who was on this mysterious list that was unsealed in the courts as to those who have traveled by plane to Jeffrey Epstein's island? And Aaron Rodgers throws out this line, kind of out of left field, kind of. Wasn't a big buildup in any way, but the line was like, well, a lot of people are going to be worried about that list being published, including Jimmy Kimmel. And they're like, what? So it's one of those things where somebody says something and all of a sudden you need a second to get right with it. And so I remember watching the episode, and there's a million YouTube clips, so have at it, right? But you see that you could see the reactions of Pat McAfee. He's got a few different co-panelists on the show, his team, and I can't even remember their names, but they're regulars on the show. And you could see a little bit of tension And then it just proceeds. They don't go into a long conversation about Jimmy Kimmel, and they don't go into a long conversation about Jeffrey Epstein. Then it's just back to blah, 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 NFL, draft, recovery, whatever. Well, the damage was done. Why? Because there are certain words, terms, things that you say that can shut a conversation down. I know this is a really long setup to top business tips, but I just wanted to lay the groundwork for a couple of things. And so this becomes headline news for the next several days. And Jimmy Kimmel goes out of his mind and is screeching on his monologue and comments. And now we've got a full-on war between Jimmy and Aaron Rodgers is keeping quiet, and Pat McAfee is trying to play peacemaker, if I'm interpreting that correctly. So after the broadcast, he's saying, hey, I understand that Jimmy would get like super hot, but Aaron Rodgers, and so he's not really jumping in and taking a side. But what's going on? It's this incendiary ugliness. Jimmy Kimmel's getting more heated. And then it's the following Tuesday, and Aaron Rodgers is back. He gets a chance. He's invited back on the McAfee show. Nobody's doing anything. Nobody's suspending him or whatever. He's back on the McAfee show, and Pat McAfee, to his credit, literally is like, hey, look, obviously there's a lot going on. Jimmy Kimmel has literally gone ballistic. And by the way, I support that. And has threatened things, talking about courts and legal. So the floor is yours, Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers doesn't exactly go out of his way to make Jimmy Kimmel feel any better. Now, he says, and he reads his own quote, I never implied blah, 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 blah. Well, wasn't good enough. To me, personally, I'm not saying it was or wasn't good enough. To me, it wasn't good enough. It was sloppy, and it was a perfect opportunity to make an amend. State your piece. See if they could become peacemakers. As a result of Aaron Rodgers not making an apology or being more direct about accountability, it's then announced within, I guess, 24 hours that Aaron Rodgers will not be back any longer for that season on the Pat McAfee show. Pat McAfee puts out a quote saying, hey, that's probably for the best. I'm relieved. This is crazy because I'm like, I thought they were friends. What's all that mean? And by the way, don't get me started, as I understand, if anyone's watching the show live and wants to chime in, Aaron Rodgers was back on the show today, which is nuts to me. But I'm saying all of this because there are certain things, in my humble opinion, that you don't throw around at someone. That is not trash talk, that will shut a relationship off. And that might be something like using a racial slur. You don't. A homophobic slur. You don't. You don't threaten violence. And you don't call somebody a pedophile. You just don't. Unless you know point blank they are. But to throw that around, and I've heard this term thrown around so much, and it's so freaking ugly, that this is where we are. So, why do I bring up all that salacious stuff? And by the way, I am going to just literally play a brief, if I can make this work. I feel like I have vastly improved in regards to my tech skills, but they're not perfect. Let's see if we
We'll be addressing that tomorrow. We'll be addressing that tomorrow. Jimmy Kimmel obviously had a 7-minute and 32-second diatribe last evening to start the show, kind of explaining his side of the entire thing. A lot of people said they respect more jokes in there.
Yeah.
A little bit more jokes.
Sure.
Seemed like it was a little bit more of like he was super bummed out. Just kind of wanted to get it out there. Aaron, I think this is the perfect time for you to kind of address your side of this. You've been threatened to be sued. You've obviously been talked about by a lot of people yet again, and I'm sure you have thoughts on it. The mustache looks great. Go ahead and take it away, pal. And I want to let you know, I will check you. Okay?
Damn right.
I will check you, okay, on anything you say that I know isn't true. Now, there's going to be a lot of stuff you say that I'm all. Just let me know if I should check, please, with what you're talking. You have more research than me. Anyways, Aaron Rodgers, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, the research, that's a whole nother story. I mean, why would you do any research on anything ever? Look into anything. Listen, I think we should just get into it, though, just so we can have the woke establishment who's just tuned in for this part. Let's just get this out of the way first, then they can move on with the rest of the day, and we can all move past this. It's been an interesting week for sure. Very, very interesting week. A lot of things have been said. A lot of people have been taking shots at me without mentioning their vax status first, which I thought we established with Ryan Fitzpatrick. That was how we're going to do things moving forward. We haven't done that, obviously. So,
Nick
listen,
Wright,
jokes aside, I want to.
Nick Wright did.
Listen,
Yep.
Nick Wright did. I heard Nick Wright.
Yeah. Listen, jokes aside, I'd really like to get into this and then let's just move on. So, the history of this, before I get into what I said, what I actually said, and how I feel about all that, the history of this, whatever this is between Jimmy and I, this goes back to COVID times, right? And in COVID times, he mentioned on his show jokes about my immunization, which I know you also made a little joke about it. I'm not going to get into that whole thing. I've talked many times about that, but I made a joke about that. And the fact that my own research. He didn't just stop there, though. He made a lot of other comments about unvaccinated people, mentioning that they don't deserve treatment. If they're at a hospital, they shouldn't be given a hospital bed. He made comments about repurposed drugs that were being used all over the world that have incredible safety profiles that were derogatory. He mentioned ivermectin being horse-based and pushed that whole narrative for a long time. He gave a platform to one of the biggest spreaders of misinformation during the COVID times, Dr. Fauci. So in my opinion, he ripped me about the vax, and that turns out to be an L on many occasions, because the vax was not safe and effective like we were told that it was in the beginning. There are a lot of injuries now that we've seen related to the vaccine. So in my opinion, you went after me. That's fine. You're a comedian. Go for it. Not offended, but that was an L. Fast forward to, again, unprompted. We're talking on our show, as we do, about a lot of different topics. Somehow the Epstein client list comes up. And I said, it's interesting, and there were for a long time. Even still, there hasn't been a list that's been released. There's been one person's, deposition from a 2015 case, right? But we said there's an excitement to expose corruption. And what I joked about the other day about popping a bottle, there's excitement about when the corruption anywhere gets exposed and people who are accused of these heinous crimes get exposed. That will be nice, that we can get this all out in the open. That's not there. So I made this comment on the show whenever that was last year, right, I believe. And then unprompted, he comes out and says that I'm an overly concussed wacko. In my opinion, it seemed like because I believe that there was a list and that there were names on that, right? So, then we fast forward to this last week, right?
I went long on that, by the way, folks. So if you're watching on the replay, there's a lot, and I very well may come back to that before this episode concludes. So there's the setup. Now, for me personally, I'm going to speak for me personally, nothing more. I find it wildly offensive that using a term that was thrown is considered a joke. I made a joke, as Aaron Rodgers said. I know I'm taking it out of context. I know it. But you just heard the setup of where this went. Jimmy Kimmel said this about me about COVID, and I made a joke. It's so ugly and salacious. For God's sake, folks, they have separate areas in prisons because the prisoners find it so salacious. I have no idea how or why or in what way Jeffrey Epstein was killed, but he was killed in prison. There are people that are sentenced for child abuse that wind up getting hurt, maimed, or killed by other prisoners. So you cannot throw that around at somebody. My challenge with all of this was Jimmy Kimmel was brought out by name. So you're probably like, okay, this is a lot. Where's the business side? Steal that old line, where's the beef? I'm going to throw you a tip right now. The number one tip that I've come to learn to keep you in a conversation is to listen. Actually listen to what's being said. Don't go on what I said. Don't go on your Facebook posts or your Facebook pals. Listen. In a business setting, listen to the other person. This is why being fully engaged to me equals fully authentic. It's really important. So we just listened to a lengthy excerpt, the beginning setup, observations, minor observations. Pat McAfee is still referring to in a really serious moment to me. Oh, hey, the mustache looks great. Take it away, pal. Sounds a little light-handed. Right? Now, he doesn't have to come off as all preachy and heavy, but it still sounded a little peacemaker-like when he could literally, Pat McAfee could have said, hey, we know this matters. We know it's serious, the conversation. Aaron, why don't you explain your side of the story? And then it could have gone in any singular direction. But it's set up where Aaron Rodgers is putting up a wall already. The woke people. Let's get to the woke people. Don't worry about the research. All of that throws into one lump sum. This woke, liberal, politics, whatever, joke. It ain't. It ain't a joke. Calling someone that shuts down relationships. All right? So I'm bringing that as the setup. And if you're around and you're in the chat, drop me a note in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. If you are watching this later, think about this. Watch the whole clip, okay? Watch the whole clip. Watch all of it. But here's what I wanted to get at. Listening to people is so damn important because what we've done, one of the things I will agree upon, is this. Back when when Aaron Rodgers was talking about COVID. By the way, the first time I ever communicated with the No Filter Network was during a time when cancel culture was big. It was about 2 years ago. So we were still in the midst of some COVID, and I'll get to that in a moment. But listen, because the easiest way to end a business relationship is to shut down a conversation or shut down a person. I hate the term cancel, but the fact is shutting someone down typically ends a business opportunity. So listen. Tip number 2, when somebody articulates a point in a business conversation, things get heated, right? So whether it is a price objection or an objection as to where you're coming from in regards to if you're in sales, you encountered objections all the time, right? And it was your ability to handle an objection, which often allowed you to either move a sale forward, move a relationship forward, like a progressive relationship, or launch it backwards. And sometimes when you got launched too far backwards, you never recovered. So again, listen to someone. You want to really make certain you're listening. Repeat back how you understand what they said. Like maybe you use the words. Maybe you use the words. Hey, if I understood you correctly, you just said, and I'll use this example. So Aaron, if I understand you correctly, what you're saying is the setup was you got some cheap shots taken at you by Jimmy Kimmel in regards to COVID. Calling you, and even recently is referring to you as a wacko and taking shots at your research that you did and the inoculation or the vaccination. Did I hear that? I heard you correctly, right? So therefore, you said that. And in fact, what you also said was, I was only referring to a list and that we should see a list. And at this moment, the entire list has not been out, but I was referring to a list. Did I get it right so far? Do I have it right? Yes, no, whatever. You know what that does? It diffuses you a little bit in a business conversation. You hear something that makes you uncomfortable. You don't have to repeat your emotion or how you're feeling, because that all has to do with you. Repeat what you understand in the communication, because it also, like I said, it diffuses you, number one. Secondly, the client or the colleague or whoever the person is you're speaking with will feel heard, acknowledged, validated, which often, by the way, is all you want. Yeah, you want your outcome to, well, but so often it's simply, did you hear me? Did you hear me? And did what I say matter? Not, do you agree? Are we in harmony? So again, number one tip in a communication, especially if it's getting heated or uncomfortable, listen. Number two, acknowledge the person by making certain they know that you heard them correctly. And the hack, repeat it back to them. Not in a sing-songy, condescending way. Just repeat it back in a sense, I want to make sure I heard you right. I just want to make sure I got it right. And maybe say it back. Number three, in the top three for tonight, number three, take a freaking breath, okay? Do not shut somebody down. More importantly, that sense of acknowledging and repeating, here's what you're trying to avoid. Shutting someone down, talking over them, or when you talk over them, talking to the point where you're cutting out what they have to say before you understand or before you get the whole picture. Now, that video that I was playing, I want to see if I can get this to work. If it starts it over again, I'm not going to start it all over again, and I'm just going to cut off the share. But I want to see if the video continues. Let's see where we are.
We'll be addressing that tomorrow. Jimmy Kimmel obviously had a 7-minute and 32-second diatribe last evening to start the show, kind of explaining his.
Doesn't let me do it.
Let me know if I should check.
So,
Nick
listen,
Wright.
jokes aside, I want to.
Nick Wright did.
Listen,
Yep. Nick Wright did.
They don't deserve treatment. If they're at a hospital, they shouldn't be given a hospital bed. Whole narrative for a long time. He gave a platform to one of the biggest, because the vax was not safe and effective, like we said. It's interesting, and there were for a long time, and get this all out in the open. That's not there. So I made this comment on the show, whenever that was last year, right? I believe. And then unprompted, he comes out and says that I'm an overly concussed. Wow, really hoping that doesn't come out. End quote. That's what I said. That's that there was a list and that there were names on that. Right? So, then we fast forward to this last week, right? And I said that a lot of people, and I'm quoting myself here, a lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, are really hoping that doesn't come out. End quote. That's what I said. That's the entire quote.
Here's what Aaron Rodgers did that is effective. He literally isn't getting heated. He's explaining himself. The reason you're getting this information is that Pat McAfee is not pushing, challenging, or talking over him. By the way, and I said I am a big fan of Pat McAfee, I just said, by the way, sorry. I'm a big fan of his, but he tends to talk over people a lot. So Pat McAfee showing restraint, Aaron Rodgers is communicating. There is so much of what's being said that I disagree with. But I think it's really important to hear people in real life, in relationships, in business. Now, the real fast backstory, how nofilter.net helped me become a better business person. First time I appeared on this platform was as a knocking guest. And by the way, if you're around to knock, do it for me. It'll make me happy, right? Here's what I was going to say. I am, through a colleague and friend and high-performance coach, NHL longtime player Dave Scatchard. I'm part of his all-star coaching platform. Dave is my coach. So I bring it up because Dave is guesting on a Jeremy Roenick hockey-based program. At that time, it's called JR Hits Hard, and Hits Hard. And so, but since that time, flash forward to 2024, JR and Tim Peel have created a great hockey program on nofilter.net, Snipes and Stripes. So, honest to God, if you haven't watched Snipes and Stripes, this is the shameless plug for my friend Jeremy Roenick and Tim Peel. Watch the damn streaming platform right here on nofilter.net, Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Now, back to all that. There's a lot of things that me and JR don't agree with, whether it's politics or whatever. And I've broached this before on this program. But I remember going into the program, and I remember knowing a lot of the stances politically, and I tend to get like sensitive, right? And I remember I knock and I'm going to go at it and blah, blah, blah. And JR asked me, so what do I think of his opinion on what they were talking about on that night's show? And I literally said something to the effect, something like, hey, look, I don't agree with most of what you have to say, but I absolutely staunchly defend your right to say it. From that point, we forged a friendship. I've knocked on his door literally by phone, not his front door, and also within his program from 2 different live streams that JR created a couple years ago to this year in 2023, 24 with Snipes and Stripes. And so a friendship, a bond, and the improved business relationship. I hear people more. I don't get defensive and need to jump in, right? However, and here's your life lesson for tonight. I'm going to read something. So I think I'm stealing this from Jimmy Kimmel and a feature on his show called Mean Tweets. So last night, I'm seeing something on the No Filter Instagram page, and they're referring to this situation. And I jump on and start to make comments about it. And I apologize for looking down. Do you want me to put on my studious reading glasses? There you go. Huh? I say a couple things, and I'm going to read some of the comments back. And then I'll explain the context of how we could all serve ourselves better in regards to improved business by improved communications. I'm commenting and I say something like this. Aaron Rodgers was way out of line. He was 1,000% wrong. I'm trying to find the exact words from me so I don't paraphrase myself. But he was 1,000% wrong, and I agree with all that he should have been, kicked off or something like that. And so now I'm going to read a couple of responses to my post on the No Filter Instagram page where it says, I say all that, and then I read back, Kimmel covers up for pedos. What? How do you know? Here's another one. Yeah, John Duffin Media. Yeah, because all the shots he took at Rodgers since the beginning of COVID were above board. Get the hell out of here. Thank you. Another one referring to my comment. Hey, John Duffin Media. In Russia, maybe. Not here, sir. Or at least it used to be that way. Another one. Listen to the history of Kimmel and Rodgers and see which one should still have a voice. Okay. Well, I have. And I support, in this case, Jimmy Kimmel, but that's me. Another person responding, John Duffin, cry me a river. Go find your safe spot. Kimmel is a piece of shit. Thank you. Here's the one I really wanted to read because it taught me something. So this comment says, hey, John Duffin, you're the decider of wrong? Because I literally was like, no, I think I said that He was dead wrong, is how I referred to Aaron Rodgers. He was dead wrong. So here's the response. You're the decider of wrong. You're kind of sounding like these guys. I'm right, you're wrong. No more free speech for you. Well, maybe you got something here. That same person continues. Hey, with all due respect, sounds like agreeing with Rodgers being kicked off a platform for something he said. Then someone defended Rodgers and you said he was dead wrong. You kind of sound like ESPN. Maybe I did. We then are communicating back and forth, and he's now laughing, and he's like, hey, John Duffin, you're dead wrong. What's all that mean? It simply means this. I cut someone off in their response, calling them dead wrong. So technically, I don't know that. I've shown or shared where I stand personally from the Pat McAfee show. I believe I shared. I'm just not going to watch Pat McAfee on Tuesdays anymore. I can't quite get the fact that after Aaron Rodgers was thrown off the show, I don't know, yesterday, that he was back on the show today. So I don't know what that's about, more to be revealed, right? But I shut someone down in the Instagram comments. So here's your bonus hack. Again, I'll repeat, for business. Do not shut somebody down. And to recap the top three, do not shut people down. Listen to them fully. If you need to repeat and articulate what it was that you thought you heard, what it does is give you a chance to breathe, and the other person feels acknowledged and validated. You don't have to agree. I didn't agree with JR that night. I don't agree with JR in terms of he knows that, and he doesn't agree with me in a lot of sense of direction. But we absolutely are crazy about each other, and I think he's one of the coolest people I ever met. And I always want to hear what he has to say. I don't care what the point of view is. I want to know it because I want to get to know him better and better and better. And that's in business. You might think, oh, that's like all buddy stuff. In business, here's how it goes. You can't solve a client's problem if you don't hear them, or if you heard them wrong, or if you shut them down, okay? The bonus hack that I refer to, here's your last tip of the day for just today, right? Here's the last tip of the day. Any chance you can have the conversation verbally, not by text, not by email, not by social post, speak to somebody. Ideally, face-to-face, watch their body language, allow them to feel your energy. But at the very least, articulate the point. So people, again, feel your energy. So often your intentions are, you can't tell what they are if you are texting, typing, frenetically doing this, like, unlike, block, right? Then we're back to a couple of years ago when we were just literally cutting people off, and they invented the term cancel culture. It doesn't mean I don't have an opinion. It doesn't mean you don't have an opinion. But the fact of the matter is, the only way we're going to move anything forward, relationships, friendships, business results, is that everybody needs to be heard. You can't help somebody solve a problem if you don't know what that problem is, and that's often the way business is conducted. No one is selling at anybody anymore. The things that change, the way the needle moves, is somebody's helping another person solve a problem. So how can we solve a problem? Listen to each other, for God's sake. I don't have to agree with this. You know where I'm coming from with this current situation. But what was the best takeaway from the ESPN exchange was that Pat McAfee literally listened. He didn't jump in. He gave a forum for his colleague to speak and allowed him to speak and continue to speak. Was it for ratings? Was it for attention? Was it for social media, more grabs, likes, engagement? Who knows? Who cares? He did it. And so to me, that was a powerful moment. What you can learn in business is this. Again, as I said, you got to listen to people. You can't get defensive and pissy and no, I don't want to hear. No, you're dead wrong. Those were my exact words. less than 24 hours ago. So I learned something. So for the cool people, even the nutbags, sorry, I didn't say that out loud, did I? The nutbags that were calling me a bunch of mean things, so what? So what? I heard you. I acknowledge you. I literally read some of your posts out loud. Great, right? And we're all going to live and we're all going to move on. So that's my rant for tonight. I want you to keep watching. I want your feedback. I want to hear it. I want to know it. Again, you like it, you dislike it, whatever. But take these highlights, these moments that happen, you can learn something from it. Apply it to your life, apply it to your business. You want the goal is you always want the communication to continue. You don't want it cut off and you don't want it ending. So there you have it. I will leave you be. This is John Duffin here, Duffin Media, Duffin Coaching. I'm always happy to help. Easiest way to get at me, duffinmedia.com. That's got all my social media profiles, got my podcasts, my website. But again, I'll repeat, duffinmedia.com. That's how you get to me. And I address each and every comment, email, text, as you just read, the mean tweets, whatever, right? And that's how we're all going to keep rolling. So again, thanks for joining in for another episode of JD Gets Authentic. I want you to be your most true, best, authentic self. Have a fantastic night. Keep watching us on nofilter.net, and we'll absolutely talk soon. Be well. Bye.